Can you hear us? Can you still hear us now?
I'm hearing you well.
Uh, Not happening. What's going on? Handheld one. Wow.
You want to say a few words? I'll just start. Do you want to say it? No. You may maybe at the end. Okay, everybody. I'm going to bring you together for the next session. Janusz, can you hear me? This is Kirsten. I don't know whether you can see me, but can you hear me?
Kirsten, I'm hearing you well.
Fantastic. Welcome to the session. We're just getting started. It's the first day, so as you know, there are some adjustment questions.
Yes,
Okay.
I know.
Please do take a seat. Yes, if you, the guy's going to come and help you, just sit. Your life. Darian, please. You go along to that one. Okay. If you are enjoying a dialogue space, which I thoroughly endorse, but we are about to start a panel, could I invite you to do that outside or join the panel? This time around, we're going to try and bring in some voices from the floor, so please prepare yourself to put questions forward. Good morning, everybody. My name is Kirsten. I lead an organization called Climate Kick, which is one of the core partners of the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub. Very proud to be here, COP28. And we are about to start a session on the role of the Innovation Hub in bringing together and creating a space for systemic change, systems change, an expanded space of action and of collaboration. Okay, I'm looking meaningfully at this last group of people talking over here. Diane, Bjorn, we're going to start. Out or in? One of the two. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. So this is a session which is introducing COP and the role of the Innovation Hub in this COP, what its place, its understanding, and the importance of creating a space within the UNFCCC process to explore how, in particular, how in pragmatic, real, grounded, community-led ways and in deep partnership ways do we close the gap between what we think is possible collectively, individually, as businesses, as governments, and what is needed. It's massive implementation gap. It's unfortunately getting wider. We know that there are really challenging characteristics. It's messy, it's difficult, it's about negotiation, and above all, it's about shifting mindsets and shifting practice. So this is what the purpose of the hub is. You will hear from many of the speakers 3 words that characterize this space of action: sharing, caring, daring. So I'm going to start by introducing our speakers. We're going to have some reflections from each of them on this broad question of how to expand the space and the pace of climate action. A couple of pointed kind of debate questions. I would love to hear some input and some reflections, questions from the audience. So we'll try to manage our time to do that. So let me introduce for a start online, joining us from Europe, Janusz Potocznik, who is co-chair of the International Resource Panel and someone with whom I have the pleasure and the privilege to work in a number of different contexts. John McCalla-Lacey, who is the head of Global Environmental, Social and Governance for KPMG International. Welcome, John. And Darian Stibbe, who is the executive director of the Partnering Initiative. Very, very deeply grounded in the notion of how we change our collaborative practices. Welcome, all 3 of you. We will not have Fang Lu Wang joining us this morning, so 3 speakers. Okay, let me start with you, Janusz, and then we'll move to Darian and to John. This question of how can we use innovation, intended in the broadest possible sense, to expand the space and the pace of climate action. And climate action also there, meaning adaptation, environmental regeneration, sustainable development, reducing emissions, and allowing people to come out of poverty and inequality in ways that are thriving for 11, 10, 8, 9, 10, 11 billion people on this planet. What mindset shifts, what practice shifts do we need to achieve transformation in the current context? Janusz.
Thank you, Kirsten. I have to apologize first because I'm hearing the echo of myself. That we couldn't fix it, but I will try to do my best. So first, thank you for the invitation to speak. For the first time in human history, we face the emergence of a single, tightly coupled human socio-ecological system of planetary scope. So we are more interconnected and interdependent than ever, and our individual and collective responsibility is accordingly increased. Human activity is driving overshoots of 6 out of 9 planetary boundaries, pushing us out of the safe space in which our society have evolved. The International Resource Panel's upcoming Resource Outlook 2024, officially it will be released at UGIH 6, that's in February next year, shows us that our material extraction, so everything extracted from the earth, and processing accounts for more than 90% of impacts on land biodiversity loss and water, 55% of greenhouse gas emissions, and 40% of pollution-related health impacts. All seen an increasing trend since the IP's last global report outlook in 2019. In total, global material use has increased by over a factor of 3 since 1970. And if current trends continue, it is projected to grow from approximately 500 billion pounds in 2020 to 160 billion pounds by 2060. Currently, the wealthiest benefit most from resource use and are also most responsible for the environmental impacts. Meanwhile, many low-income countries still have not enough material to meet basic human needs. More one-third of countries globally do not have the basic nutritional needs met. 40% do not have adequate access to energy, and nearly 80% do not meet the threshold for overall life satisfaction. Our consumption and production patterns, designed by industrial world, are wasteful. So if we do not change them, we will face increasingly severe environmental impacts while not having even our basic needs. Continuing current trends means increasing global inequality, which in itself is a major driver of climate change. The risk rapidly increasing social tensions of roles for all projects left unchecked. Rising global inequality in the next 50 years will lead to increasingly dysfunctional societies. According to the authors, regional societal breakdown will not be ruled out this century. Equality and poverty elimination is key if we want people to be concerned about regenerative economics and decarbonization, and social and environmental efforts go hand in hand. All these efforts will be focusing on delivering human needs. We depend on the resources for our basic needs: mobility, nutrition, safe shelter, clothing, sanitation, and more. But looking at the overwhelming body of scientific evidence, we need a fundamental systemic societal shift in how we use them, away from wasteful linear production and consumption systems towards resource-efficient societies, optimizing well-being for all. To avoid severe environmental impacts, breaking the links between ever-increasing resource use, economic development, human well-being, and environmental impact, so-called decoupling is a must. In high-income countries, absolute decoupling should be the aim, decreasing material use while maintaining or improving well-being outcomes. In low and some middle-income countries, where additional material use is still needed to build infrastructure and meet people's basic well-being needs, relative decoupling should be the aim. Sustainably rising resource use at a slower rate than growth in well-being while minimizing the environmental impact and maximizing essential needs. This is unnecessary and just. We should simply not accept that meeting human needs should be resource intensive and stop stimulating extraction-based economic success. Rather, we should avoid responsible, innovative, creative ways of meeting human needs. With decouple resource use from human well-being, we can design solutions for, we call them provision systems, resource-intensive systems which deliver human needs. Optimizing these systems to meet societal needs with minimal resource input would improve overall well-being while mitigating growth in resource use and, of course, environmental impacts. We need several major innovations to build a decoupled world. First, we need a new approach to value, redefining value as a delivery of genuine human needs, not as a concerted real profit. Resource prices should reflect our redefined values. Second, set overall targets, guide resource use, and ensure consistency with globally agreed environmental goals. The international science community needs to work on translating climate and biodiversity commitments into resource use targets. Third, create low carbon, clean, and circular business models. This means reorganizing production to use less energy and resources human needs. Fourth, we should make trade an engine of sustainable development, incorporating impact resource use into trade agreements and enabling producer countries to capture a larger share of resource value. And finally, we could vision a positive future to island investment and innovation. To put these solutions into action, we need positive forward-looking perspectives on what's achievable. To facilitate this transformation, the world's most ambitious researchers and governments could play a crucial role in establishing and reimagining the goals. International Resource Panel is certainly ready to play its part. The future will be green, or there will be no future. Thank you. Back to you, Kirsten.
Thank you very much, Janusz. The future will be green or there will be no future. And I think this notion of designing solutions for provision systems where we are designing for balance, interdependency, relationship, the consequences of actions and the ways in which we think about ecosystem services and embed that in our own actions and policies and decision making. Darian, can I come to you on this broad question of how we expand the space and the pace of climate action, also building on this notion of provision systems when it comes to human interactions and partnerships?
Thanks so much. Good morning, everyone. Very nice to you. A pleasure to be here this afternoon. I've just got off a plane overnight, so apologies if anything I say makes no sense whatsoever. But I'm Darian Stevie. I'm the director of the Partnering Initiative. We are an international NGO working with the UN, with multinational companies, with foundations, with NGOs to really drive effective collaboration to deliver sustainable development. And I believe in magic, and I believe in alchemy. I believe in magic because I think you can get something out of nothing. And I believe in alchemy because I think you can change things. The something out of nothing, the magic, comes from partnerships. When we align and combine the resources that we bring together from public, from private, from people, from academia, from media, we are able to create something that would just be impossible otherwise, that creates additional added value. It's more than the sum of the parts. And I believe in alchemy because I see how these forms of public-private collaboration can deliver exactly the sort of transformational change that is required, that we've been hearing about. And the thing about partnerships and innovation is that they are intimately interlinked, because partnerships not only bring together different diversity of partners with different thinking, with different approaches. And that in itself can lead to new ideas. But also they bring to bear a whole range of different levers, different pieces of the puzzle that you can put together in different ways, opening up all sorts of new possibilities that just wouldn't be possible otherwise. Let's just take one quick example. In the United Kingdom right now, as you know, it's a miserable country, cold and wet, and we use about 50% of heating, 50% of energy in houses goes to heating. And it's very inefficient, the houses in the UK. They're all built in the sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Very inefficient. Basically, if we were to just insulate the houses, we would significantly reduce the amount of carbon that we use. Okay? And not only that, the cost of retrofitting, insulating houses actually gets paid back after over about 15 years or so with a reduction in the amount of energy you use. This is a complete no-brainer, right? Of course, you go and insulate your houses because you will reduce the amount of carbon you're using. It is costless. No one has to pay any money. It's for itself. Amazing. It's not happening. There have been attempts to make it happen from time to time, but it's not happening. And this is because this is a system challenge requiring system levers coming from different sectors of society. In order for it to happen, there are a number of things that need to be in place. Firstly, government needs to put in place the right policies to absolutely drive this as a priority. Secondly, we need business to step up. We need business working with government to develop clear standards for insulation. Potentially some new products that can be more easily fitted into houses, so that using the business's approach to innovating new products. We need businesses to invest to train up the people who can go around. We're talking about millions of houses. We need to be training tens of thousands, if not more, of people to be able to do that. That's the role of business and government in further education colleges. We need standards. We need organization, getting everyone in the right place at the right time. And we need finance to basically pay for it to happen in the first place, paid back over 15 years. This is all doable, right? That's nothing I'm saying there sounds impossible. We can pull all these things together. And yet, for some reason, it doesn't happen. And we'll talk a little bit later about why it doesn't happen. But as a precursor, there are multiple barriers. There are lack of trust, there are lack of incentives, there are risks, both financial risks and political risks. There's a lack of a safe space to even have these conversations. And all of these things need to be put in place in order to drive these projects. It's not about talk, it's about action. Obviously, you start by bringing people into the room, but it is collectively working through the problems, creating a shared vision, and then implementing, committing and implementing. We need to move from that talk to that action far, far faster than we are at the moment. And things like the Global Innovation Hub are in a good position, I feel, to provide that safe space, provide that momentum, provide what we call the activation energy to really push these collaborations to make happen.
Thank you very much, Darren. That idea of activation energy that manages to make magic from a situation that, in this case, the one you're describing, in fact, is, as you say, a no-brainer. This is incremental change. It's not even the big transformative shifts that we need. And in fact, if we think about what Janusz was saying and what we know is the reality just for Europe and the global north, if we were to retrofit all of the buildings that we have and build the new buildings that we have, we would exhaust the global stock of materials without having gone even halfway through. We also need whole new paradigm shifts for the way in which we're thinking about heating and cooling in houses at all. And as you rightly say, skills and the willingness to partner and work together in different ways is one of our biggest barriers. So let me come to you, John. You heard Janusz referring to the importance of business model shifts, paradigm shifts in the way in which we think about materials, resources, energy, and our core economic understanding of what value is. How do you see this question from the perspective of KPMG of in the role of innovation to shift some of those paradigms and shift mindsets and practice shifts?
Right, absolutely, and delighted to be here. I was just scribbling away and some of the notes. And I've been on quite a few panels before. Never have I heard magic mentioned before, but I'll try to weave this into my response. So I'm global head of ESG at KPMG. At KPMG, we look after we provide audit, accounting services, and so on. We work across 143 markets, some of the biggest companies across the world. Of course, yes, we have our own net zero targets for 2030, but I want to be clear, the biggest impact that we have is through supporting our clients. Therefore, my role fundamentally is about embedding ESG, sustainability in all that we do, every product, every service, every solution, all the advice that we provide. Now, our company is a partnership, a deliberate play in the word partnership. Some have can you hear me? Good night. Yeah, some of the companies have been established for over 150 years, some of our markets. So really, in terms of driving that paradigm shift, and I love how you framed this initially when you talked about mindset and you talked about practice shifts. It's really getting into performance, it's getting into accountabilities, it's getting into KPIs and measures right from top down. We focus on strategic intent, financial ambition, and operating provisions, and really seeking to drive that down into change throughout the whole organization, recognizing the fact that because we've been established as long as we have, there will be some real deep-seated cultural ways of working. Now, why am I talking about this? And this isn't about the KPMG show. The reason why I frame this way is because this is fundamentally the same challenge that our clients face in driving that paradigm shift, in those accountabilities, in building, transformation, innovative ways of working and driving them through to completion. So it's really about having that cultural change, those measures, and driving it right through. I'm going to take just a brief moment, if I can, just to provide an example of where I believe. A collaboration, a partnership. I talked about our internal partnership, but this is an external partnership where I believe that they really begin to frame and potentially provide a solution which really addresses things in a systemic way. Um, there's a new product, it's called Greenprint. So it's Greenprint AI. If you have an opportunity to, please do Google it, look it up. But they're here in the blue zone. And what they do, so Greenprint is a partnership with MAS, which is the Monetary Authority of Singapore, with HSBC Bank, MUFG Bank, ourselves, and Microsoft. And what this does is it provides an AI platform, so an AI platform to SMEs, small to medium-term enterprise businesses. Why then? Because SME businesses are 90% of all businesses in the world. When we speak to our clients, our large corporate clients are often really focused on decarbonisation of their supply chain. They often talk about the fact that they do not have the visibility of the supply chain. Okay, so this platform which is being trialed right now, is aimed to give this tool in to all SMEs at low or no cost. And it will enable them to collate their sustainability data, report on their data, share their data to their corporates also, and through the AI tooling, it will build out a first step decarbonisation pathway. Now, if we think about just the transformative nature of this, it's written, there's some analysis to show that within the supply chain, there's about 40% of emissions could be abated through relatively easily accessible and low cost levers. Putting that in the hands of the SMEs would be hugely transformative. However, let me just bring this back as I summarize, though, from a systems perspective. Let's think about this. What it means is you've got scope free SMEs in the supply chain. And in this data, the data is going to be consolidated and it can be published and shown to the financial institutions, which then fund those SMEs. It gives them a sight of their financed emissions. It also enables them to tailor products to help the SMEs to accelerate decarbonisation. By gathering this data, it also provides this in the hands of corporates and so on. So this is what we need to really think about is how we innovate, how we work through partnerships to provide solutions to solve some multi-level problems.
I had a brief stint actually working in KPMG, and I remember one of the
Did you?
um, elements that I observed is it's like the dark matter. If you can intervene into the dark matter of performance, accounting, valuations, and the way in which businesses think of themselves in relationship to others, there's an awful lot that you can do. So I want to challenge us all then to take what we're describing up to the next level. So we're describing the challenge of systems change as the challenge of putting the pieces together, as Andrew Steer was saying on the previous panel, on the problem of if you can't get the policy levers, the financial levers, if you aren't actually aligning, for example, even in a policy perspective, one set of inputs with another set of inputs. If you think in the European context around the Raw Materials Act and how that relates to the Restoration of Nature Act or how that relates to underlying land use practices, you have a set of disconnects. So there's critical elements about getting an alignment on policy, on getting an alignment with finance, and thinking longer term instead of short. Individuals, you were talking about building retrofit. Often, one of the challenges is consumers just not being able to either financially afford or even psychologically wish to the disruption in the medium term or the short term. How do we get that? How do we put these pieces together? But one of our challenges is how do we then lift that up to paradigm shifts where we are meeting needs and not necessarily the needs of what people think they need now, but the needs of how we need to create alternative transformative lifestyles. I want to come back to this because there's a question around how innovation addresses root cause issues and how innovation can apply to governance, to multi-level governance. But let me start by inquiring into the audience. Anyone with a question they would like to put to these panelists at this particular point in time as we build forward to challenge to this reflection on demand side innovation? Yes? Can you come up and join us? I'm going to give you a microphone.
Thank you all very much. My name's Ian Hitchcock. I'm a Master's of Public Policy student at Duke University, excited to be at my very first COP. And one of the kind of on this thread that I've always thought about is that there's a disconnect between the ways in which financial systems and business systems, as they've been enacted, or even policy systems, as far as thinking about short-termism, with politicians being concerned about the next election, easy to make promises, but maybe not being accountable to the kinds of timeframes in which those actions will be implemented, or on the business side, quarterly shareholder reports kind of almost forcing people into short-termism. And so I'm wondering to what extent in each of y'all's avenues you see there the opportunities to kind of break free of kind of systemic impositions of short-termism, both in the policy space and in the business space. Thank you.
That's a fantastic root cause problem question. One more? You were applauding the question. I'm applauding the question too. Okay, and one more question anymore? Nope. Okay, so let's go with that. Right. How are we going? How to break free of the limiting, not enabling constraint of short-term thinking and short-term incentives and short-term habits and practices. Who wants to start?
Uh,
John,
I'll
you go.
start. It's a fantastic question. As I say, it's brilliant. I'm going to make it. It's not my quote. I've stolen this from a client, and within embedded, they're an asset manager, global asset manager, embedded into their strategy. They articulated three key truths. Number one, customers do not want to pay more. Number two, shareholders do not want to earn less. And number three, politicians want to be re-elected. It's very simple, very simple. But when I heard this for the first time just yesterday at the WBCSD, it was really impactful, and I thought, wow, So by holding those truths, what it means is a couple of things. In terms of breaking through this, number one, you look at, well, to what extent can we see synergistic solutions which holds to these three truths which will likely be supported by all these parties. And that may sound like alchemy, and it may sound like, well, John, what are you talking? Let me give you a specific example. So I'm also from the UK, but fortunately I came in a couple of days earlier. So so I'm also from the UK. One of the things that we're talking to the UK about, so politicians want to be re-elected to get that. UK has a really significant productivity issue right now. And it's not just the UK, there are other governments around the world. So you just put that out there. Okay. The UK also has been impacted by inflation, and one of the things that they're looking to work through is their balance of payments, things like benefits and so on. So we put this out there. What we managed to do is to connect a number of topics and actually present to the government and say, hey, you realise 50% of the people in poverty in the UK are disabled or are living with somebody with disability. Just bear with me for a second. Um, we've done some analysis to say that, look, if you embedded in your own net zero plans, especially plans for London, which will be really work on things like transportation and so on, elements of motability. So this is accessibility in terms of things like transport. What you would do is you will get more people who are disabled out to their homes. They will go into academia. They will go into the workforce. They will also spend more money. The estimate that we got was £2 billion per month on average. This is significant. So when we quantified the whole piece, it was 72 billion over a multi-year basis of investment. So actually looking at how can you connect the dots between different things and have a synergistic approach. That's number one. However, I want to be really realistic on this. You will not have a synergistic approach on everything, and there are some things which need to be challenged head on. So one of the things that we're doing, and we're just setting this up now, this is brand new, is setting up an AI challenge committee. So this committee will effectively, and we're seeing our clients do this, put in place small groups that are challenging themselves in terms of current ways of working, current practices, and actually seeking to drive that step and not incremental change. So if I summarize, you've got synergistic based on those three principles and say, well, how can you seek alignment? That will be on some things, but then also having this mindset of actual, internal disruption. Hope that helps.
Lots of thoughts about that. Well, let me pass straight to Janis. Do you want to say something on this?
Actually, Palestine. The answer, the question is indeed extremely good. My first point would be advice to all of those who are thinking for short term, taking painkillers for chronic diseases. Actually, they will make it worse. And that's actually what is in this world too many times happening. And we simply need to understand that if you look it from the business perspective, by the way, I would just remind you of the Economic World Forum, which is I think, technically releasing 10 more risks which are identified in a survey. In the 10 years perspective, these are the risks which were identified from 20 to 23. On the first place, failure to mitigate climate change. On the second place, failure to climate change adoption. On the third place, natural disasters and extreme weather events. On the fourth place, biodiversity loss and ecosystem collapse. On the sixth place, natural resource crisis. So basically they know what is coming and they are sometimes more strategically thinking than actually the political world. In that context, I would just maybe remind you on some of the lessons which we can, from this type of perspective, learn from the recent COVID experiences. So the first lesson which we can definitely learn, if we see something is serious, we do act. Second, governments act and only when actions are posted. Third, system change is possible. Just imagine, would it be possible to have work from home, which is today practically a new normal, to be introduced 2019 without having a COVID break? In a way, because we would simply not accept it. Fourth, if we look to from the human needs perspective, one of the lessons which we can easily learn, it's also better understand what actually the human needs are. Just ask yourself how many clothes you were wearing during the COVID and compare that to the period before COVID. And then ask yourself the second part of the question, which is maybe more important. Were you more happy or less happy because of it? And last lesson, which is in the context of this conference we are holding, is we obviously don't take climate change yet seriously enough, because otherwise we would act in different way than we are acting. Currently, we are still pretty much between maximizing profits and one of the typical examples of that kind of, I would say, hypocritical behavior is if you look to the fossil fuel subsidies. According to IMF data, they were the highest in the year 2022. So how's that possible? The whole world is actually for the great already talking about important to fight climate change. And the fossil fuel subsidies are still the highest the last year. So a bit of this hypocrisy and a bit of seriousness would help.
So that's an interesting build on indeed. How do you synergize amongst a set of interests that are not necessarily what we need, but are very, very dominant? How do you accept that we need to fundamentally disrupt them and notice where there's a combination of hypocrisy and disconnect? 7 trillion of subsidies to fossil fuels is in that category. And how do we leverage our own capacity to engage when we think it's serious enough and bring that forward? And that, of course, is an interesting question of the way in which we play with time, because I think one of our challenges is we are thinking of climate change as a long-term problem instead of an immediate emergency that requires emergency measures to intervene constantly. Darian, what's your reflection on this point on the Partnerships Initiative?
I think this is really the nub of the entire issue, that very last point you made. So we've seen when COVID happened, we saw that within weeks, everyone sprang into action at every level. Like in my community, people would get together and they would be cooking food for people who couldn't go out to the supermarkets. We saw companies developing vaccines alongside universities, alongside in partnership with the regulators to make sure the vaccines were regulated super quickly and could get out there amazingly quickly. All of this action, everyone became an agent, it was all part of everyone's everyday life because of the urgency and the severity of the threat. Climate change, the severity of the threat is huge compared to COVID, massively bigger than COVID. The problem is the question of urgency, and it's just not in people's minds that it is an urgent threat. It is sometimes. In Cape Town, they started running out of water. And as soon as they started running out of water, guess what happened? The whole system started to shift. There was massive investment in reducing the amount of water being used, in pipage, to reduce losses of water, new technologies that could use micro amounts of water for crops, etc., etc. But you had to have that what we call sort of a boundary condition change, the fact water was running out, in order to actually for the system to then react to the new reality. And the challenge with climate change, I think it is a complete failure of leadership, because we have to have the leaders standing up and saying, this is not a problem for tomorrow, this is a problem for now. And we need to be on a war footing equivalent here. We need to be investing, we need to be shifting our entire society. This needs to be the number one focus of every government in the world. It's all very well tinkering with your sort of internal systems, but this is an existential crisis. And I am not seeing sufficient leadership from government. Seeing a lot of business voices standing up, but the business within a set of rules and regulations and frameworks. It can't set them. It can be part of making sure they make sense. But it's the political leadership that has to set the regulations. And business will respond and adapt. It doesn't mind new regulations in general, prefers as few regulations as possible. But as long as these regulations are put in, they're sensible, they're consistent, and most importantly, they're for the long term so that business can invest and slowly adapt their businesses, the business will do that. It will adapt. What happens though is if you chop and change, then that is where the real problem is. UK government again said that we would get rid of petrol cars in 2030. Business starts to invest in electric cars, all going very well. Suddenly, the UK government changes its mind, makes it 2030 to 35. It's companies that then started shouting about that. They were fine with it. So the problem is one of leadership. And the problem is, I think one possible solution, well, first of all, we need the leaders and the citizens need to be pushing their governments much, much more and say, yes, we want a long-term view. But other thing is parliamentarians. The role of parliamentarians is really, really important because they can happily work across parties. And this is what it has to be. It's an emergency. There has to be a cross-party solution to it. We're not seeing the leaders able to do that at the highest level, at the prime ministerial level, but parliamentarians can do that. They can start building those alliances, working with industry, working with citizens and citizens' assemblies to really sort of build the momentum for change. I think that's where we actually have a possibility of actually making this happen.
Thank you. So it's an interesting challenge also in terms of how we design for humans, because I think the other lesson that COVID has taught us is that we're very good at stepping up to a major emergency, and we're not very good at the stamina that is required to follow through on some of those changes. So how do we build the capacity not only to sense the urgency and engage in those terms, and at the same time have the stamina and resilience to endure through with the steady direction that we need? I do wonder about this morning we were reflecting upon the fact that this is a space for how, for asking ourselves how questions, answering them, experimenting, learning, sharing, and daring to try. And there were two reflections that I think very relevant to this discussion. One on it's time to bring in brain science. We are flooded with dopamine signals from literally everything, quarterly reports, political cycles. Everything sitting in our mobile phone is a constant dopamine feeder, which making it incredibly difficult for us to cognitively and physically actually do anything long term. And secondly, the reflection on the fact that we have been educating ourselves in the climate movement that this is all about emissions and that it is all about raising an awareness of the risk and the challenge. And we have a massive deficit of imagination, a global deficit of imagination of what does it mean to live well sustainably. So as Janusz, you were talking about the critical problem of changing the way we are thinking about materials and really shifting our understanding of consumption. How do we create the aspirational, unstoppable, irresistible picture in the mind of every single human on this planet of living well with a different relationship to materials, resources, and energies? So I'm going to ask us to close this session with a reflection from each of you on an invitation and a challenge to the Global Innovation Hub as part of the UNFCCC, embedded in this COP process in a particularly difficult moment in the world of polycrisis, conflict, fear, and really actually the race against despair, that we can do this in time and together. What is your challenge and innovation to this hub to unleash the power of the multi-level action that each of you has been describing and the differences in leadership? What should the Innovation Hub be doing to make that possible? John, let's start with you.
Shall I start? Yeah, no, thank you. I'll quote Emmanuel Faber, who leads the ISSB's International Sustainability Standards Boards. And what he said during the conference is change is coming, whether we like it or not. And just to expand on that, we have a choice right now, and this change could be managed and informed or unmanaged and uninformed. So there was a key piece here around education and also, really driving the embedding of that management systems. And I know we haven't got much time, but I could talk a lot about accountabilities and reporting and controls and so on, but I shan't do that. In terms of the challenge for United Nations for the Innovation Hub, I believe strongly that we need many more Roger Bannister moments. So for some of us who are like myself, the other side of 50 or older, they will remember Roger Bannister, who he ran he's the first person ever to run a 4 minute mile. Before then, people thought it was not humanly possible. Now, that was an achievement in running that, but the thing which was most impactful is what came next, is that after he broke that, you saw a series of people breaking it after. He'd shown the way, he'd shown the art of the possible. And here is the specific challenge. The reason why I reference Greenprint of the many, many examples, and there are some others, is to just very simply illustrate that systemic there is a partnership, and this partnership is self-funding. So they're taking the money out of their own pockets, not from the government. They're partnering in a way which just hits multi-level topics: scope free, SMEs, corporates, disclosure frameworks, decarbonisation pathways, transparency of data, consistency of data, and also when you talked about, and I love to get on that, just the level of information using AI tooling to churn through that is to say, hey, this is how we connect the dots. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to elevate that. I'm going to show that. I'm going to expose this to you all. Do likewise and do better. So that's what I would say would be the challenge that I would put to the Innovation Hub, a challenge which we're very, very happy to support on.
The dare to try and show that it's possible. Thank you, John. Darian.
I'd just continue on John's theme that so many of the solutions are out there. The funding is definitely out there. There's an enormous amount of money that's desperately trying to find places to invest. Technologies are mainly out there to solve most of our problems. Yes, there's certainly some areas, particularly around storage of energy, that are massively important still, but there's a lot of technology out there. I think so much of this is an organizational challenge. So much of it is around bringing the parties together and the parts of the levers and the finance and the political, etc., that we've talked about. So why not have a couple of programs where the Climate Hub is actually explicitly saying, right, in this particular area, we see there's this absolute need. We are going to help to drive it to make that happen. We are going to be the supporters of the whole process of partnering to bring the parties together and actually make some of this happen. And then this can then be a demonstration, a lighthouse to the world along the lines that John is saying. It is possible. You can run the 4 minute mile. We just need to make it happen.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Janusz, your 1 minute challenge and invitation.
Maybe 2 minutes, but I have 3 points to do. One is first, you should read the book from looking to maximizing the supply, maximizing the living system that involving why that is important. Because it is incentivizing sector innovation, because it's allowing you to in the most specific model, and because it's delivering the multiple benefits for people, for the planet. So it's essential to the car, to the mobility. Second, you could complement the supply side, where, by the way, all topics pretty much still focusing on, with the demand side. We should ask with surpassing planetary boundaries and what needs to be done, that this will not continue. And third, we are more and more, in particular in the countries who are from the global south, talking about the need for adaptation, which is absolutely necessary and important, because they are hit first and most. But without, particularly along the global north, to still being concentrated on the mitigation, we have a serious problem. Costs due to climate change are already here, and people are ready to show solidarity immediately when somebody around them is hit. But why the hell we are not ready to show solidarity inside it, but only ready to show that cost?
Well, there is a very big challenge and a fantastic one. Why are we showing solidarity ex post and not ex ante? So we have to get emissions down. This is a space for action. It's a space for collaboration. It's a space for hopeful dialogue and a space for challenging dialogue between actors who can and should be doing more. And this is a space of daring to do that, sharing what is learning, and really caring enough to try. I'm going to pass the last word to Masamba Toye, who leads the Innovation Hub. Thank you.
Thank you. Indeed, very interesting panel with a lot of key elements. First, what I have, from what I have heard here, I think it will be very important to also look at what I will call the inner development goal. We want to achieve the sustainable development goal. Achieving them will require that we also achieve our inner development goal. And I will come back to the three elements the Global Innovation Hub is promoting: caring, sharing, and daring. We need leaders that care about well-being and the needs of the people and the planet. We need leaders that are willing to serve, and we need leaders that are daring. This will enable two things. It will enable us to do the right thing. And doing the right thing is around one key word. We need to set goal and target based on what is needed and not what is possible. We need to focus innovation on the needs of the people. And innovation needs to be driven by what is needed and not just developing product and looking for use case. We need also to do it rightly, and doing it rightly means fully using systemic approach. So we need to set goal and target based on the longer term horizon, and then backcast to translate it into action now. We need to see things globally and then act locally. We need to see the interaction between the different elements, the across issue, but then act in an integrated manner. This will enable us to do the right thing and then do it rightly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Masamba. Thank you to all of our speakers. Janusz, thank you very much for joining us online. Darian, John, thank you. And thank you for a fantastic question and for being here.
Thank you.